Sukuna. Hate Yuji? Whatever good you mean. What's up guys, I'm here and we want to do a breakdown / live reaction and review and analysis of Cursed Valors. Why? Valor? Why did I say Valor? I'm sorry, but Cursed Valors, why does Sukuna hate Yuji so much? Okay, I threw that extra so in there, but I'm excited. Cursed Valor, he's a W content creator. I already liked up the video because you know you boys gotta be prepared, but we do have a hefty, defty, no lefty chunk to talk about with this kind of discussion, if you will. So I want you to be ready. I want you to be prepared, because editing me also needs to be prepared as we hop right into this. Editing me. Are you ready? 3, a 2, a 1, go.
Throughout Jujutsu.
What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, I like to yap, if you didn't know. And since I do like to yap, I do have to request that if you want to see this video without my yapping, the link to the original video will be in the description down below, along with a link to Cursed Valor's channel. He's an amazing content creator, covers a lot of JJK, covers a lot of, I believe, I need to double check what other anime topics he covers, but I believe he covers more than that too. So please, peep him. He'll be linked in the description down below. But before we actually hop into the video, let's talk about why I think, hypothetically, Sukuna would despise Yuji so much. Like, actively hate him. You know, like, be his top op number 1. I'd about to say like number 1,000, but no, he'd be number 1 on the list. And it's mainly because, like, imagine this. Let me put it in your scenario, in a scenario we can all understand. I put you, or maybe not me, because I don't think I can do that, but someone puts you in a room for 1,000 years. You know what, let's not even be generous. Let's just say 150 days, right? Like, just for half a year or so, you are locked in a room by yourself. You have nothing. You can think back on your memories, you're conscious enough, or even if you're not conscious, you are just locked away for 150 days. That section of your life is gone. You are never getting that back. And then when you're finally free, you aren't actually free. You're locked away in another person's body that you only get control out of under very, very, very limited circumstances. How would you like that? Would you want to do that right now? Personally, I wouldn't. So that's like that's the most fundamental reason I could understand for Sukuna just not liking Yuji, because I also would not like being stuck in a cage for a majority of my days. That'd be pretty whack. Like, notably, Yuji is a prison, a container, a holder for Sukuna. It almost makes me wonder, like, did Sukuna and Kenny have any conversations about that after the fact? Like, dude, you said you were gonna get me a body. I couldn't even move. Like, notably, Sukuna is the only one out of the incarnated players, or the incarnated sorcerers from years past, to not pretty much immediately get control over the body. Kashimo never mentions being, like, in a symbiotic relationship with his host, and then once Mahito was used to awaken everybody, then he got control. Ryu never mentions that. Earl never mentions that. Reggie never mentions that. So they all kind of just skipped. Boom. Sukuna, after being sealed for 1,000 years, was put in a box. A box that stood in direct opposition to everything he stood for. I would not like that. So I can get why Sukuna doesn't like it. Because, like, it's a logical thing to do, like, just on a human level. Like, we don't like being put in cages. It's not fun. It's horrid, in fact. So that's the big thing. The second thing, it goes back to the ideals thing. Like, notably, you could not have 2 more diametrically opposed characters, in my opinion. Like, I guess, legally speaking, you could. Like, you could make them more diametrically opposed if you wanted to, but, like, from a thematic level to a character level to a belief level, Yuji and Sukuna, they stand in complete opposition to each other. Like, they genuinely see things and the very world itself completely differently. They're now starting to converge a bit more because of Yuji holding Sukuna and their souls being fused for a while, but, like, outside of that, they are direct parallel opposites. Yuji values life. Sukuna doesn't value life unless it's entertaining to him. Sukuna is the pinnacle of sorcery, the apex of Jujutsu, something so transcendent that people like Satoru Gojo had no chance against them, and didn't even get to see the full capabilities of, and he's the second strongest character in the entire series. Yuji, for the longest time in the series, couldn't even be argued to be top 20. Like, maybe. No. Like, for a short period, he was arguably top 10. Like, when we didn't know the incarnated sorcerers, once they started getting introduced, once more characters started getting introduced, Yuji fell off the wayside. He didn't have a cursed technique. Sukuna was the pinnacle of cursed techniques. They are opposites in every way, from mentality to ability to capability. And obviously putting those two against one another, you're actually not going to like the opposition all too much. Now, of course, you can mature as an individual and begin to respect and understand the opposition, or even have your mind slowly get changed towards the opposition, just like Sukuna's experiencing right now after being fused with Yuji and recognizing that Yuji himself is an unbreakable ideal. That's all fantastic, but at least at first, you don't care about any of that. Because why would you? You'd just be annoyed that this person who stands in direct opposition to you is also the only way you get to exist in the current day. So those are my two big things. If I had to hazard a guess, right? They're opposites, they don't agree on anything, and Yuji was literally a cage. Put me in that exact same scenario as Sukuna, yeah, I'd also crash out just a little bit. Just a little bit. I would probably lose my good mind. I would also go absolutely insane and not be happy at all. I would not be happy at all with the scenario I'm put in. So like, it'd be like that, would it be like that, would it be like that? Of course, I still like Yuji more. I still think Yuji is a more interesting character. But, like, on the grounds of just pure hatred and malice, yeah, I can see Sukuna. I can see the perspective. Because, once again, I think a big thing that kind of gets glazed over about Sukuna, and not just glazing Sukuna, is the whole idea that he's human, too. Like, he is a sorcerer. He does have feelings and thoughts and emotions even before the soul merger with Yuji. So, like, he was a dude. And, like, most dudes do not like being sealed in other... Well, some dudes like being sealed in other dudes. But, like, most dudes wouldn't want to be literally sealed in other dudes that oppose them in every way, shape, and form. But that's my thoughts. Let's see what Curse of Valor has to say on the topic.
Jujutsu Kaisen, we see our protagonist Yuji Itadori interact with the big bad room in Sukuna, and something that the community is always catching is just the expert levels of hatred and glazing that Sukuna does to Yuji. In almost every single interaction, Sukuna displays a bully mindset and just a general utter disgust towards Yuji, and we are all aware of his constant and endless demeaning of Yuji and his struggle. But why is this the case? What caused Sukuna to despise Yuji so much? And why does Yuji seemingly not care at all? Well, let's talk about it. Oh, and spoilers ahead, you've been warned. So, why...
You have been warned. You definitely have been warned. But, with that being the case, that's interesting. Yuji not caring at all. I would say, here's the thing. I guess in the way, it depends on what you mean by caring, right? Because, like, Yuji definitely cares. Because Sukuna's hatred manifests as, like, direct trauma to Yuji. Pretty much consistently. Like, in every single opportunity. Especially the whole Mega incident that he's showing on screen right now. But... my thing is, right, for Yuji hypothetically not caring, if I had a hazard a guess for that, it's because he didn't necessarily want to do it, and he did it for the greater good, and Sukuna's just a bad person. Like, once again, I put you in the shoes of Sukuna for a second, but I'm going to put you in the shoes of Yuji. You, in a scenario where you were trying to save multiple people, including your own friends' lives, needed to undertake the consumption of this cursed object. You find out after the fact that this cursed object is the most evil thing to ever evil. Like, legitimately a monster in every way, shape, and or form. And all they tell you to do in order to maintain your livelihood and, you know, not immediately be executed is, you know, hold it. Make sure that it doesn't do anything all too crazy. And, like, eat the rest of the fingers. So you can eventually get rid of this very evil thing by just living a regular life. Of course you do it! So when this thing gets mad at you, sure, you may not be willing to consider its human perspective, considering it's literally the most evil thing ever. But at the same time, because of that lack of perspective and willingness to acknowledge that perspective, considering that perspective comes with, you know, the mass slaughter of everybody, then naturally, obviously, and of course, you're going to be like, nah, it just doesn't necessarily make sense. And you even see it. I do get what he means now by, like, Yuji not caring. Because you kind of do see it. Specifically when Meguna first incarnates, Yuji asks, like, what is wrong with you? What is actually, like, he doesn't, because he can't fathom it. He doesn't understand why Sukuna is so, like, malicious and disregarding of life and is so twisted and callous and cold. He just can't understand it. So he literally asks, like, what is wrong with you? There's actually, like, there must be a mental disconnect in your brain or something. You are weird. Like... that I can kind of see. It's that lack of understanding. And of course, right, like, despite me trying to put y'all in Sukuna's position earlier, I'm not saying Sukuna's justified for anything he does. He isn't. I believe in the value of human life. Yuji believes in the value of human life. I think most people believe in the value of human life. Because it's valuable. But, even still, just because it has value, Sukuna doesn't see it the same way. And he never saw it the same way. So hypothetically, if Sukuna were to have incarnated properly, and, like, Yuji just gave him control of the body, yeah, nothing would really change. Sukuna would still be a grade 1 S tier crash out. Maybe with actually, maybe not. Maybe not. Because, like, Sukuna's weirdly passive. As long as people start worshipping him again and he got his regular sacrifices, who knows? Who knows? But I still think no matter what, as long as the vessel was going to be a vessel, they were going to be suppressed by Sukuna. They weren't going to be allowed to have individuality. And thusly, some sort of hatred was going to burgeon beneath whenever they would impose their limits, their control over the king. As we saw even with Megami, where he was like, oh, Megami's holding me back. Oh, I hate him. But let's see.
Why does Sukuna seem to have an unhealthy obsession cosplaying Catholics and meat riding 15-year-old boys? Well, it comes down to what that boy represents. Purity. And unlike the Catholics, it's not purity between the thighs, but the purity of ideals that gets Sukuna so hot and bothered when it comes to Yuji. Because Yuji represents purity of ideals, and in doing so, he's rapidly approaching Sukuna's level as a sorcerer, and that seriously irritates Sukuna. Sukuna, above all, values his own satisfaction. As he says in his own words, if he wants to cook, he will cook. If he wants to be him, he will be him. And if he wants to kill, he will kill. This is the kind of code that Sukuna lives his life by, and because he lives this way, he viewed himself as so grand that not even ideals are worthy of him. But in complete contrast to this, Yuji Itadori lives life completely selflessly, no matter how much suffering it brings upon him, to the point he completely mirrors Sukuna. Mahito even mentions that Yuji saves people without a second thought, which perfectly mirrors how Sukuna kills without a second thought. Sukuna kills because it satisfies his mood, while Yuji does the exact same except saves people instead. The separation between them appears because while they both act in a similar yet different ways, Yuji differs in that he has ideals in addition to being completely selfless and living a selfless life. Sukuna thinks ideals are beneath him and make you weak, while Yuji...
And a funny thing, he's spitting right now. He's absolutely... The bars are going great. But, like, one thing that is true, and it's an underrated aspect of Sukuna, or not necessarily, it's a really, ironically enough, contradictory aspect of Sukuna. He claims he held no ideals. But, like, he specifically lives by his own ideals. Like, notably, he doesn't say no one's ideals but my own matter. The way I view life is correct, and that bada bing bada boom. He says no ideals have value. But what he says as early as the beginning of the series, the whole idea that, oh yeah, your system isn't run by the strongest? What kind of backwards logic is that? That's an ideal. The belief that power should rule over all. The idea that one should live... Is hedonistically the right term? I think so. Kind of, sort of. Hedonistically, in the idea that one should live for their pleasures, by their pleasures, of their pleasures, regardless of what other people think. That's an ideal. That's a thought process. That's a way of living your life. The only person with no ideals is a person who doesn't exist. Because how you choose to live is your ideal. Whether the ideal was born of you individually, you uniquely, and no one else has ever expressed the ideal before, and you're living by it, or you got it from other people. Like, a lot of people do. Notably, a lot of my ideals were forged by how I was raised, and they're bits and pieces and bits and takes that were taken from my own family, from people I met, from superiors, everybody. That's a combination of my ideals and my thought processes. And while Sukuna seems to have believed that he's completely liberated himself of ideals, he's truly bound to them the hardest. And that isolation that comes with his ideals is why I think the defeat of Sukuna isn't, one, just necessary, but two, likely. And I think the ideological battle, once again, ironically enough, going back to ideals, between him and Gojo is technically still raging on. By every single strike he receives, by every single battle he undergoes, he's still, by all technicality, fighting for his own ideal. Proving that he's the strongest, and the strongest should reign supreme, and the strongest should do nothing but what it wants until it inevitably will die. And while that's his thought process, he tries to write it off as not an ideal, but when it truly is, it's one of the most basic and fundamental ideals, ironically enough. It's simultaneously very high-low concept and, well, no, it's simultaneously very high concept and simultaneously very low concept. Where, like, you do not live in a world of isolation. You do live with other people. Heck, living in a world of isolation as humans is, like, basically impossible because, you know, we kind of aren't built for that. We're social creatures. But Sukuna doesn't see it that way. He sees himself and others, and usually the higher levels of consciousness, the higher levels of thought you get into, the more you begin to conceptualize yourself amongst the others and the others amongst yourself, and you start to like really acknowledge that. Meanwhile, Sukuna has kind of just gotten to the first stage and stayed there. I matter. What I think matters. What I thought and do matters. Nothing else matters because no one else can prove that it matters to me, since they cannot overwhelm me in strength. It's a simple, but hey, I can't necessarily blame Sukuna for his ideals, because as Kashimo asked him, were you born strong or did you become strong? It didn't matter, because now he is strong, and thusly he gets to choose how life is lived, since no one else can make him do otherwise. I'm not it's weird, and I do have like a whole... I made a video talking about Sukuna's idealization of power, but I do want to talk about like Sukuna's mentality in general, and why I think in some twisted way, some of his ideals, some portions of it are actually correct. Some portions of it are actually right. And some things that Sukuna does and lives by actually are worth it and are things that people should hope to adopt. Obviously not all the bad parts, but there's a good part buried in there. But let's see what Chris
has constructed an unbreakable ideal, and that is making him strong, with Sukuna himself feeling like Yuji being able to stand toe-to-toe with him because of that is absolutely unacceptable. While this is more for current Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuji is completely selfless with unbreakable ideals, while Sukuna is completely selfish with the desire to break said ideals. What about earlier, JJK? Since day one, Sukuna has been Yuji's top hater, so how did that start? In my opinion, I think there are a lot of reasons why Sukuna started hating on Yuji, and the initial reason I think is because of Yuji's potential. We've seen from Gojo, who, after hanging around Yuji for only a couple of weeks at most, was able to tell Yuji had the potential to not only surpass him, but his entire rank of special grade. If Gojo can sense this with a small amount of observation, it stands to reason that Sukuna, who lives and breathes Jujutsu, would be able to see that Yuji had the potential to rival him or surpass him. However, the reason such hatred for Yuji develops is because Yuji suppresses that potential by living so selflessly. We saw from the Gojo fight that such a grand battle seriously entertains Sukuna, and he seems to have thoroughly enjoyed his fight with Gojo, and that's what Sukuna lives for, his own satisfaction. So now imagine for a minute, you see Yuji, this 5-star premium meal, probably the best meal of your entire life, but because he lives so selflessly and does not conform to your ideals of strength, you will never be able to eat that meal. That would seriously annoy anyone, and this is likely what Sukuna feels. So when Sukuna pops up to hate on Yuji, it's possible that he's trying to pull Yuji away from this selfless behavior and push him toward his own philosophy of selfishness, guaranteeing that he gets that 5-star meal. Something really interesting when you keep this rattling around in your brain is that notice how many opportunities Sukuna has to kill Yuji, but he never seems to actually kill him, always letting him off the hook. Once he takes over Megumi, he could have killed Yuji at pretty much any time, he even says so himself, but he doesn't, even telling Araume not to kill him so they can laugh at him. This may seem like a Yuji just got really lucky moment, however, we've seen Sukuna kill for less. He almost killed Mahito just for touching him, and he killed Jogo pretty much because he thought it was funny. My guy even killed 2 schoolgirls because they asked for a favor. But here comes Yuji, literally punching him in the jaw and throwing him off buildings, but he lets him live. It seems to be quite in contrast to his previous actions, and I think it's because as much as Sukuna wants you to think he has no interest in Yuji, he 1000% does have an interest. Even more so when you remember that Sukuna only remembers the names of people that hold his interest or are worth remembering, and he remembers Yuji's name once he hops into Megumi. For all the work Mahito put in, the taunting he did, Sukuna didn't bother remembering his name, but sorcerers like Gojo, Kashimo, Higurama, and Megumi are all names he remembers because they have something that entertains Sukuna.
He's spitting right now. Okay, I want to hop in on a potential idea. That is always true. Like, notably, we as readers, as superior creatures, as higher dimensional entities relative to the entire world of Jujutsu Kaisen, we understand why Yuji's made it so far. Because Gege gave up on the idea of dropping him off in the first 2 arcs. But also, it is because he's the main character, right? So he has to make it through. No matter how many times he should perish for one reason or another, he will always make it through. But giving it the incontextual narrative reasoning that it's Sukuna seeing something, seeing potential, seeing the hypothetical greatness in Yuji is interesting. I actually do like that one. It's something that part of me wants to disagree with for the fact that, like, we haven't had a moment where Sukuna's explicitly sat down and been like, do it. Get better. Get stronger. Like he did with Higuruma, where we see him actively, if not for long, admittedly, but actively sit down and be like, no. Go ahead. Get stronger. Learn RCT. You pulled off domain amplification. Impressive. Do it again. Keep trying. Like, notably, we see him try and do that. But we don't get to see that with Yuji. But the idea that Yuji innately has that potential, and Sukuna, who doesn't just live and breathe Jujutsu, as he said, but also is, like, infused with Yuji, sees that potential and wants to drag it out of him. The insult that Yuji gives to him for the fact that he's literally so well built for Jujutsu, born of kenjaku, a sorcerer of over 1,000 years, plotting and planning over and over again. Yuji, before he ever even got a whiff, a taste, a drop of that cursed za, being so physically powerful that he breaks all world records just casually, and was so unbelievably fast and strong innately as a superhuman that he was beating his own cursed energy to the punch, quite literally. All that goes to show that, yeah, Yuji does have a deep amount of potential, and he's very much a prodigy. I know Yuji gets clowned on a lot, but he is a prodigy. And I guess, yeah, Sukuna would probably come to hate that he sees so much within somebody else, sees the depths of what someone could hypothetically offer him if they just gave in, if they stopped thinking like Yuji did and truly started to dive into the mania of what it means to be a sorcerer, one who is no hero, but chooses what they want to do, how they want to do it, why they want to do it. Then yeah, I guess that would annoy Sukuna. And all the constant berating and jabbing and taking away and all that just to leave him alive is probably to wake up that darkness, to get Yuji to finally break. And once again, it goes back to what is, I'm seeing the vision. Curse got into my head. I see the vision. Of course, he's talking about the early series now and building up to this, but also it's sort of been reinforced. Of course, Sukuna may have been doing it entirely subconsciously based on how he reacts in, I believe, 248, when he's like, hold on. Something's changed. Like, notably, I'm not even sure if it's actually a conscious action, but the idea that Sukuna has been doing all this slowly but surely, hammering away at the consciousness and the willpower and the willingness and the ideology and the everything that is Yuji Itadori, solely to try and see what could come of it. Kind of like a personal project that you work on over a long period of time just to see. You know, you don't touch it every day, but you work on it. You do a few extra bits of line art on it. You start the inking process. You may whip out your colored pencils or your markers and start coloring it in. Slowly but surely, just building up something nice. Just for the hope that maybe you can one day do something with it. Yeah, I can definitely see Sukuna being like that. Especially considering we know Sukuna is one who does see potential in others. He does recognize it, and he does respect it, and he's always willing to accept it. But ultimately, even with all that being the case, when someone refuses to acknowledge their own potential, when someone refuses to dive into the darkness that is required for one's potential to truly be realized, when someone refuses their destiny, in a way, it would be a bit maddening. Would be a bit disappointing. It's kind of like, for example, I had a friend who was amazing, legendary, next level at mathematics. They were a living, breathing calculator. You could say a random string of numbers, insert whatever functions, and they would be able to bang it out in seconds. Depending if it was like multiplication, you could have yelled out 497 times 346, and they would get it out in like 5 seconds. You know what they want to be? An actor. And I couldn't knock their hustle, because that's what they actually cared about. They were good at math, but they didn't want to do math. Translate that over to JJK, Yuji's perfect for Jujutsu. A very, very strong physical base. Extreme aptitude for picking up techniques like RCT. He's become a really good blood manipulation user despite only having likely less than a month to train it. Figured out soul-seizing punches from a book. An accidental experience with Sukuna. The man's potential is boundless. But, like my friend who didn't become a mathematician or any sort of living, breathing calculator or take those statuses anywhere and chose to be an actor, Yuji's choosing to be an actor in the play that is fate itself. Consistently destroying curses, consistently protecting people, consistently worrying about those lesser than him. And Ryomen Sukuna, who was likely a prodigy either to the same degree or much greater, obviously, than Yuji Todori, seeing someone walk down a path that was so similar to him but diametrically opposed, it would bother him. But he also would want to see if he could get that path to be walked down, just like he did. So I like it. I see the vision. 2020, crystal clear.
This is all in addition to the fact that Sukuna, a lot of the time, goes out of his way to degrade Yuji. Gege having Sukuna do such a repetitive action throughout the entire story just begs for us to ask why. The answer most come to is because he just hates Yuji. But when have we ever seen Sukuna genuinely hate someone in the series? He gets annoyed, sure, but there's never an expression of utter contempt, and even in Yuji's case, it's thought of by Sukuna internally as an irritation. But so was Mimiko and Nanako, and look how they ended up. The special part about Yuji that Sukuna objectively sees is his tenacity. No matter how much Sukuna tries to use the strength disparity to bring down Yuji, he just can't, and as he says, Yuji is unbreakable. It's to the point that when he actually starts talking to Yuji during his body switch with Megami, he seems genuinely confused at how Yuji can keep resisting the misery he thinks is inherent to humans because of their weakness. He seems puzzled why Yuji keeps marching toward his own destruction while wishing for happiness. To explain this a bit more, Sukuna is watching Yuji constantly endure pure suffering because of his selfless nature, his own destruction, and Sukuna can't understand why Yuji does this and still wants to be happy. What Sukuna fails to understand Yuji is in that Yuji doesn't try to escape that misery. He tries to embrace it and bear the weight of everyone's misery. He believes it's his responsibility to take on the share of suffering, like he mentions in Shibuya. The more Yuji suffers, the stronger he becomes, as mentioned by Maki and her sister. Sukuna cannot comprehend that concept because he thinks suffering is only for the weak, which ties back into the original point that Sukuna hates Yuji, or at least...
And the funny thing is about the world of Jujutsu and Sukuna's extreme potency in the world of Jujutsu in regards to the lack of understanding of why people struggle, why people fight back. Cursed energy is built on negativity. It is built on agony. It is built on suffering, pain, malice, and darkness. But of course, to become a better sorcerer, you need to be able to control that darkness. You cannot let it control you. As Todo mentions early on when he's teaching Yuji about the fundamentals of cursed energy. The willingness to give into the darkness, but yet at the same time having the control to not fall into it. It seems that Sukuna looks down on the pool of his own darkness, and the darkness of the entire rest of the world, and really fishes out what he finds interesting, what he finds important, what he finds useful. The power, the strength, the understanding, the techniques, and whenever they do appear, the interesting fights that exist in the muck and the mire all far beneath him. He has a transcendental view of it. He uses the darkness. The darkness doesn't use him, and if it tries to, he will knock it away. It's why even in the most dire and darkest of scenarios, you consistently see him smiling. He's lost his heart, he's lost arms, he lost his lower belly mouth, he lost everything, but he's still smiling. He's enjoying himself. The darkness is doing a decent job of trying to fight back, but Sukuna seems so transcendent of it that he doesn't necessarily care that's trying to fight back, because he knows the darkness is but a tool, something that will work against him always, but never be able to be actually successful against him in its rebellion. In contrast, direct contrast, Yuji Todori, like he mentions, lives in that darkness, lives in that mire, believes that he should not just be transcendental of it, not that he should just use it for his own gain, use the techniques, use the abilities, use everything he's been taught, all the loss and suffering he's gone through, but he also believes that ultimately it's his responsibility to be one with that darkness, to embrace it, to undertake it, to lift others out of the darkness, to try and drag them to the point where Sukuna stands, transcendental of it. And I can definitely see how that would lead to hatred. That would lead to malice. Because Yuji would be an example of someone so deeply steeped in that darkness that it soaks down to his very bones. But he refuses to allow that to stop him. He drags the darkness with him like chains. Ironically enough, very similar to the boulder of Sisyphus and that story, that Greek story, where Yuji consistently pushes the boulder up that hill, while Sukuna stands at the top of the hill, knowing the boulder will roll back down, knowing that Yuji will continue to try and push it up anyway, confused on why he would even bother. And when you don't understand something as someone who understands so much like Sukuna does, he is the strongest sorcerer in history, not just in terms of output, in terms of CE amounts, but also in terms of knowledge at this point. I mean, you could still argue kenjaku maybe, but I don't know, kenjaku ain't looking a little bit rough. But with that being the case, people don't like what they don't understand. And while Sukuna is a person who may not fear what he doesn't understand, like a lot of people naturally would, when he doesn't understand something, he will do everything in his power to make sure he figures it out. And we see that with the Infinity, we see that with Kashimo's techniques, we see that with Hikaruma's techniques. He's very particular about figuring things out. Yet Yuji keeps eluding him. And of course, that would lead to hatred. Why won't you be solved? Why can't I resolve you? You are an issue that needs to be fixed, but yet you refuse to be. So yeah, I dated too. Be a bit annoying. But
let's see. Impression. Because he stands against everything he believes in, self-satisfaction breeds strength. Yuji is strong whilst never trying to satisfy himself. Ideals are for the weak. Yuji has an unbreakable ideal that makes him strong enough to stand against Sukuna. Suffering is pointless, and those with misery should not ask for happiness. Yuji is who he is because he has suffered and bears the misery of everyone so that they can be happy. There is pretty much nothing that Sukuna believes in that Yuji does not contradict. He is the perfect antithesis to Sukuna, which makes it all the more ironic that Yuji is the closest person to being like Sukuna, despite being opposite to him in every way.
And one thing that is also interesting with this idea that he brings up is the idea that ultimately Yuji is in a very similar way, just like Sukuna. They both desire something. It's just that desires happen to clash in this case. Where Sukuna desires to do what he wishes, Yuji desires to do what he wishes as well. To be that contradiction, to walk in opposition to the entire world. That function where curses should destroy humans and ultimately the strong should rule. Yuji and Sukuna stand parallel, as in they both have these desires, and they are both willing to do anything to support those desires. Sukuna at the cost of others, Yuji at the cost of himself. So they are similar in that one way alone, where both believe in an idea that is not just unbreakable, but unshakable. And ultimately, in a way, both very, very selfish. How is Yuji one, a single man, meant to fight against the very cogs of fate, to move against the world itself that operates against them? And how is Sukuna also selfish, to sacrifice all the lives that it takes to meet his own ambitions and his own cares?
These opposites are indescribably close to being exactly like him. To put it differently, if the roles were reversed, you could easily call Yuji Itadori Ryomen Sukuna, because they are that similar. Bit of a long tangent there, but I think it's all vital information for fully understanding.
But here's the thing, that last bit I don't agree with. I don't think you could, if you swap their positions, I think they'd be fundamentally different people. But I suppose, like, they could, potential-wise, you could argue they'd reach the same point, except Yuji didn't have a curse technique at first, and blood manipulation would not be cleave and dismantle. But, like, they're fundamentally unified as they were literally one being, but they do stand in such fundamental opposition that you can't switch their places. They need to be where they are. They are too different as people to switch their places and for nothing to change. So, no, I don't think, ultimately, you could never call Yuji Itadori Ryomen Sukuna. It's just not in his nature. Just like I don't think you could ever call Ryomen Sukuna Yuji Itadori. It's just not his.
How Sukuna perceives Yuji as an existence that entirely contradicts everything he's built his life around. No different to someone coming up to you and telling you the sky is red and up is down. It just seems incomprehensible. Some other reasons you could point to for Sukuna disliking Yuji is that Yuji doesn't value strength at all, and that's enough for Sukuna to antagonize him. Other reasons, like Sukuna just derives pleasure from irritating Yuji or mocking him, are also valid, but in my opinion, are far too simple considering how often it's repeated. Naturally, this interpretation isn't perfect, but expecting any interpretation to be perfect is already a doomed adventure. But if you have a different interpretation...
And I agree. I do agree. But here's the thing. Those two ideas don't need to necessarily be independent of each other. In fact, they kind of work better together. So, it ain't too crazy. You know what I'm saying? It ain't too crazy to hypothetically merge all these ideas. And it looks like we're at the end of the video, and he didn't even mention the whole idea of like the cage versus the prison and stuff like that, and like how the imprisoned would feel about the cage and stuff like that. But yeah, tackling it from this way, from the ways that they stand as diametric opposites, makes sense. It's something that is so core to both of their characters, and it's what makes their dynamic so interesting, and at least in my opinion, so high quality. More high quality than a lot of new gen dynamics, because it takes a lot of effort to diametrically oppose characters this way, and Gege does a fantastic job.
Or have a different idea of why Sukuna is Yuji's top op. Let me know in the comments. I do read all of them, and I try to respond to as many as I can.
Plot twist. I responded in the video, not in the comments. But I need to start doing that. I need to get into the habit of leaving comments on the videos I react to. That's bad. I just like the video and I subscribe to the channel, but I always forget to comment.
Next video will be out much sooner than this one. My addiction to Honkai Star Rail is fading after some rehab sessions, so I should be more productive. If you like this video, be sure to like it, dislike it if you disliked it, and subscribe if you want more. I recently released a Shin Megami Tensei video. If you're looking for something a little more out of JJK, but still in the general anime sphere. Thank you all for watching, and let's hope my glorious King Yuji continues to cook in the coming chapters. I wish you all a wonderful day.
Alright. I will let the rest of the video play out once we get to the end. I may have to peep the Shin Megami Tensei 5 video. I've not played a single Shin Megami Tensei game, nor a single Persona game. I have consumed way too many. I think I've consumed more hours of content surrounding both of those series than I'd be willing to admit. Don't go into my YouTube search history. It is literally nothing but Persona retrospectives, despite me never playing a single game. I own multiple of the game. Okay, not multiple. Actually, no. I do own the original Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. I think I even own the Steelbook for Persona 5 Royal. I've not played either. But overall, oh, you know it's a W video. Oh, you know it's a W video. Absolutely, absolutely. I like the perspective he brought. Once again, that's the fun thing about doing reactions videos. They open my brain. They can be thinking. And the thought process of what diametrically opposes Yuji and Sukuna. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. However, once again, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, do me a favor and leave cursed hatred in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you check out the original video. It'll be linked in the description down below, along with the link to Cursed Valor's channel. W content creator. You can see he covers not just JJK, but other anime content and even video game content. So do not be afraid to go peep that. But I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include a live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you come to $25 Patreon or $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. But if you want to do a one-time donation, thank your boy up, or make a hypothetical one-time video request, the link to my Ko-Fi is also in the description down below. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I would like to give a thank you to all $3 members: O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, Atkins Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Querencia Atala, Red Wolf 4765, G Prosper, and Paris Arnold. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Marcus, Kevin, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 member, Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, ChinaDoll09, and I'd like to give another gargantuan gargantuan I have no idea what that word. Thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.